Should Iran acquire nuclear weapons, that danger would become very dire indeed. They might not become a superpower, but the threat the government of Iran poses is anything but tiny. Senator Obama has declared and repeatedly reaffirmed his intention to meet the president of Iran without any preconditions, likening it to meetings between former American presidents and the leaders of the Soviet Union. Such a statement betrays the depth of Senator Obama's inexperience and reckless judgment. These are very serious deficiencies for an American president to possess. An ill-conceived meeting between the President of the United States and the President of Iran and the massive world media coverage it would attract would increase the prestige of an implacable foe of the United States and reinforce his confidence that Iran's dedication to acquiring nuclear weapons, supporting terrorists, and destroying the State of Israel had succeeded in winning concessions from the most powerful nation on earth. And he's unlikely to abandon the dangerous ambitions that will give him a prominent role on the world stage. This isn't to suggest that the United States shouldn't communicate with Iran our concerns about their behavior. Those communications have already occurred at an appropriate level, which the Iranians recently suspended. But a summit meeting with the President of the United States, which is what Senator Obama proposes, is the most prestigious card we have to play in international diplomacy. It is not a card to be played lightly. Summit meetings must be much more than personal get-acquainted sessions. They must be designed to advance American interest. An unconditional summit meeting with the next American president would confer both international legitimacy on the Iranian president and could strengthen him domestically when he is very unpopular with the Iranian people. It's likely such a meeting would not only fail to persuade him to abandon Iran's nuclear weapons, its support of terrorists, and commitment to Israel's extinction, it could very well convince him that those policies are succeeding in strengthening his hold on power and embolden him to continue his very dangerous behavior. The next president ought to understand such basic realities of international relations.
You're already seeing the kind of strategy that the Republicans are going to start employing in November. I mean, John McCain yesterday decided to attack me for saying that Iran does not pose as great of a threat as the Soviet Union did. And so if we were willing to talk to Gorbachev, if we were willing to talk to Khrushchev, then there's no reason why we shouldn't talk to Iran. Seems like common sense. So John McCain he said, oh, Obama doesn't understand the threat of Iran. I understand the threat of Iran. But what I know is that the Soviet Union had the ability to destroy the world several times over, had satellites spanning the globe, had huge masses of conventional military power, all directed at destroying us. And so I've made it clear for years that the threat from Iran is grave, but what I've said is that we should not just talk to our friends, we should be willing to engage our enemies as well. That's what diplomacy is all about. So let me be absolutely clear. Iran is a grave threat. It has an illicit nuclear program. It supports terrorism across the regions and militias in Iraq. It threatens Israel's existence. It denies the Holocaust. But this threat has grown primarily, and this is the irony, the reason Iran is so much more powerful now than it was a few years ago is because of the Bush-McCain policy of fighting an endless war in Iraq and refusing to pursue direct diplomacy with Iran. They're the ones who have not dealt with Iran wisely. Make no mistake, Iran is the single biggest beneficiary of a war in Iraq that should have never been authorized and should have never been waged. Thanks to George Bush's policies. Iran is now the greatest threat to the United States and Israel and the Middle East for a generation. And John McCain wants to double down on that failed policy. And John McCain is right that the greatest threat we face is a terrorist with a nuclear weapon. That's why when he was busy supporting a war against a country that had no nuclear weapons, I was busy in the Senate working with Republican Dick Lugar to pass legislation to secure loose nuclear weapons and loose nuclear materials around the world. That's why I've made it clear that I'll secure all loose nuclear materials around the world during my first term. But when you're running for George Bush's third term, it's hard to make a case on the merits. So John McCain's using the same George Bush textbook that we've seen year after year after year. Anything other than continuing a war in Iraq has been called the greatest strategic blunder in recent American history. He calls naive. Anything but their failed cowboy diplomacy that's produced no results is called appeasement. Here's the truth. The Soviet Union had thousands of nuclear weapons, and Iran doesn't have a single one. But when the world was on the brink of nuclear holocaust, Kennedy talked to Khrushchev, and he got those missiles out of Cuba. Why shouldn't we have the same courage and the confidence to talk to our enemies? That's what strong countries do. That's what strong presidents do. That's what I'll do when I'm president of the United States of America. So, for all their tough talk, one of the things you have to ask yourself is, what are George Bush and John McCain afraid of? Demanding that a country meets all your conditions before you meet with them, that's not a strategy. It's just naive, wishful thinking. I'm not afraid that we'll lose some propaganda fight with a dictator. It's time for America to win those battles, because we've watched George Bush lose them year after year after year. It's time to restore our security and our standing in the world. And you can vote for John McCain, and nothing will change. We'll keep fighting a war in Iraq that hasn't made us safer. We'll keep talking tough in Washington while countries like Iran ignore our tough talk. Or we can turn the page. We can restore the tradition of tough, disciplined, and principled direct diplomacy that we've always used to protect the American people and to advance America's interests. That's what Kennedy did, that's what Reagan did, and that's what I will do as President of the United States of America. That's a fundamental difference between myself and John McCain.